Tareef Jafferi is a successful entrepreneur, the founder of happily.ai. His product Happily is an application that lets an organization track their workers' happiness and provides the opportunities for them to comment on their boss. He said that happiness is an essential ingredient in the recipe of a well-being organization, so he is passionate about creating a happy environment for all working people. His product is new to the local market, but still trusted by many huge organizations like SCG Online, a reflection of how talented and successful he is. Okay. So let can you briefly introduce yourself for us?
Sure. So my name is Tareef Jafferi. You can call me Reef. My family is from Thailand. I was born here, but my father was working in Kuwait when I was born. So I quickly, our family moved to Kuwait. So I spent most of my life growing up in Kuwait, which is in the Middle East. But I always visited Thailand every year as a kid because my extended family is from here. So I always considered myself Thai. I always had my roots here as well. But I never really got to grow up here. But Thailand has always been, growing up has always been the place that I aspired to live, to be a part of. And I think that's why after I finished my undergrad and grad school, I decided to come back to work here. And the rest is history. I've been here ever since. I did go back to grad school for a bit to learn something that I was interested in. But for the most part, yeah, I have my roots are here. I'm interested to contribute the society and community here as much as I can in the capacity that I have. And yeah, that's a bit of my past and where I'm, how it's led me to where I am today.
Okay. So did you study abroad other than Thailand and Kuwait?
Yeah, so after high school, which I graduated from med school in Kuwait, I went to Northwestern University, which is kind of nearby Chicago in the US, and where I studied material science and engineering. So I did my undergrad at Northwestern, did material science engineering for my BS and MS degree. I was interested in material science because I felt it was a very tangible area of hard sciences, and there was a really good mix of both science discipline as well as engineering, which I was something that I always thought I would be. And it was very challenging, and so I always felt that I was drawn to things that were challenging to me, and that's how I got into it. To be honest with you, after doing a lot of material science and doing grad school as well, I quickly learned that it wasn't for me. I quickly learned that I didn't want to be stuck in a research lab, wearing a lab coat, waiting for results to come out of a machine. That was just not what I saw myself doing for long term. So I quickly went away from that. But that's what I studied. And then recently, after doing startups for a bit, I went back to grad school at MIT, where I focused on people analytics. It was this discipline of research and management sciences that I thought was really interesting. I never knew it existed before I went there, and it was just this perfect intersection of using data and understanding human psychology, and also using technology as well. So it was just a perfect intersection for me, and I was really interested in it, and it kind of it led me into the work that I'm doing today with Happily as well.
So did you regret going to some or learning something that you don't like?
I think there was a period of time where I definitely felt that way. It's I wish I learned something that was more useful, right? I wish I did computer science instead. But I soon realized that you can't really approach life that way, right? In the moment, if you made the best decision that you could make, that's all that matters. Things change. There's this idea of time adjustment. The person that you are today is not the same person you were 20 years ago. So to expect that you would make the same decisions using the brain that you have today is, it's science fiction. That's not how the world works. So I think that I've become very comfortable with the decisions I've made, and I try to use that to my advantage, right? Like in the position that I'm in the company that I'm running, I think that I approach it differently because I have a material science background, right? And so I definitely am very disciplined about the scientific process in which we approach the research that we do with Happily, even though it has nothing to do with material science. The discipline and the rigor in which we had to take up as a material scientist, I've applied into the role that I've taken. So I think there's always opportunity there, right? Like you take the strength, you take your problem-solving ability that you learned, and you end up applying it in different ways. And then that makes you, hopefully more unique and stronger than maybe other people who are trying to do the same thing as you are.
Oh, I see. So how did you come to like business industry or startup, something like this?
Yeah, I think it's always been a part of I think it wasn't accidental. I think I've always been intended to be a part of this building process. I like building things. I think that I've always had this fascination for software, and I think software is just a perfect big fit for me because I'm not a very patient person and when it comes to like building things. Like I want to see something built, I want to see somebody use it, I want to learn from that feedback loop as quickly as possible. And I think software allows you to do that very, very quickly, right? As soon as you try to develop things that are more hardware-based or deep tech-based or science, like high-tech science-based, that learning curve gets extended a bit further, right? And that's why I learned when I did material science and I was very early in my career, we were developing high-tech materials, right? The product life cycle for that kind of work is like 6 to 12 years. The amount of time it takes for you to go through that learning loop and build something that people will actually use takes forever. But that's what really drew me to software was that, oh, I could build something this weekend and I could get somebody to use it. On Monday, I could learn from that and I could start iterating from there. That's what I really enjoyed very early on. That's kind of how I got into it. I while in the research lab waiting for things to happen, I learned how to code, I learned how to design, build products, built that first startup myself. And it was a disaster. Like it wasn't a good product. It was, I'm embarrassed about it today, but at that point in time, it was good enough for me to have an MVP. It was good enough for me to release it into the world and get feedback, right? And learn what worked about it and what didn't. And I think that, yes, since then, I can't think of anything else I would do. I like that process so much. I like product design so much. So I'm like, I just knew that I'm going to keep doing this. I just had to find a problem area that's worth solving that I could wake up every day wanting to just, learn more about, feel my curiosity, drive my, just motivate me. And I think I've been able to do that pretty well. And yeah, and so, ever since then, I'm still working in the software space, still developing products. And I don't think I'll let that go anytime soon. I'm going to keep doing that for as long as I can anyway.
So when you first went into this sector, what do you feel like challenging or new things to you?
Yeah, I mean everything. I think that as a person who studied engineering, I think I don't know. I think I was very what's the word? Of course, I was ambitious, but I think I was overconfident as well, right? There's this level of arrogance that you have as an entrepreneur that, yeah, I can solve this problem. I got this.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to have that. You have to have this. I don't feel that I'm a very like overly self-confident person, but you have to be delusional in some way to say I could solve this problem that nobody else can solve. I see something differently than everybody else, and then you start there. And I think that very quickly you realize that, hey, there's a reason why this problem hasn't been solved yet. It's a lot harder than you think, right? It's a lot harder than you think. It's a lot harder to approach this problem for a lot of different reasons. And the only way you know that is to try and do it yourself. And I think that's what I did very early on. The first startup failed miserably because I thought I was building a tech company, but I wasn't. I was building a sales and marketing company, right? It was a social e-commerce platform. And as an engineer, I love the idea of building software, and I end up spending most of my day doing sales pitches. And like, so that was a, there was a disconnect there. And I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. And the people I'm competing with are better at sales and marketing than I am. Am I fit to battle with them? Am I fit to play this game? And I'm like, no, I'm not. So let me play a different game that I'm more suited for. And that's kind of how I guess I pivoted from one thing to another, is understanding, being very realistic as well. That, hey, I'm passionate about this problem. Am I the right person to solve it? And then you try it. And then if you realize that you're not the right person to solve this problem, then I think that's part of the learning curve. But I think the challenge for entrepreneurs, at least for me, is understanding or knowing when to quit. Right? You can't quit too early either. If you think that you could solve the problem within the first week or two that you're tackling it, that's not realistic either. So I think it's like, are you putting in enough time and effort? Are you iterating the product well enough? Are you learning enough? Be very certain in the decision that you're making to pivot or to keep going. I think I see a lot of startups pivot way too early. Right? They hit a few obstacles, they hit a few challenges, and then they're like, okay, let's change our idea. Like, no, you haven't thought about it enough. Spend a bit more time with it. And I think that was part of my learning curve as well, like trying to understand that balance, like when to know when to pivot and move on to a next idea, or when to stick with it because you're onto something. It just takes time to learn more about it to get to where you need to be. And I think that was something that I spent a lot of time thinking about and doing, getting my hands dirty and trying to figure out myself.
Like I've heard you talk about like when company don't see what they are doing and they switching products.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like this is not my way and I need to switch it like multiple times?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're always, before you hit product market fit, right? Product market fit, I think it's a term that is used all the time, but I think it has different definitions. The definition that I subscribe to is that you have product market fit when you build a product and it's flying off the shelves. Like, people want it so much, there's such a demand that you can't produce enough of it. And that's when you move on to trying to scale your company. How do I then deliver and supply enough to meet the demand? Right? But before you hit product market fit, you're always in this existential crisis, right? Am I doing the right thing? Am I building the right product? Am I in the right market? And then as you're asking all these questions to yourself, you have these urges to say, you know what, this doesn't work. And you will have these good days and bad days. Good days is you're talking to a customer and that they love it. Like, they're like, oh, if I knew this existed 3 years ago, I would have used it 3 years ago. It makes you feel really good. The next day you talk to a customer or a prospect and they're like, this is a terrible idea. Who's gonna buy this? And then so I think you go kind of through that cycle. And I think you have to, I think it's partly intuition, partly your support network as well. Do you have a team that can help you balance that feedback? Can you be critical enough and think objectively enough about feedback and not be too overly emotional about it? Which is, it's easier said than done. When you start your own thing and you're an entrepreneur, that idea, you treat it like your baby. Like, you don't want it to get hurt. And anybody that tries to hurt it, you get very defensive about. But that's counterproductive. Actually, the thing that you're trying to do is you're trying to receive as much critical feedback as possible, right? And that took me a very long time to dissociate myself from my idea. That, hey, I'm not my idea. My idea is here. You can attack it as much as you want, because if you attack it and I can defend it, it will only become stronger, and we will be better for it. But if I get too overly defensive about my idea, I will not have the courage to let it be attacked. And I think that's something that it took me a while to really learn how to do well. Right? If I look back at the startups that didn't really go the way that I planned it to go, I don't think it's because I didn't spend enough time on it, but I took too long to get that critical feedback that I needed to make a decision, right? And so that's what I try to do differently now. Is that especially with Happily, I'm very passionate about it, but I do not get defensive about this idea. I let it get stronger by itself, right? And I think that's how Happily has gotten to where it's gotten today.
Okay, talking about Happily, What's your like initial idea about this product when you first came
Yeah,
up?
that's a good question. I think that it came about from many different reasons and directions. So the first thing was yeah, different life experiences, right? I went to grad school. I went to grad school to study business, not to study people analytics, but I kind of fell into it. That was already one. It's like doing research and discovering this discipline helped me understand that this is possible, that there is something good that we can use with technology and data to improve the workplace. So that was great, right? But I didn't start happily right away. What happened next was that I had a chance to work at Google. And when you work at Google, everybody talks about how great the culture is. And I definitely experienced that, but it wasn't for the reasons that people talk about. It wasn't about, the work environment was great. It was, the facilities were amazing. The free food was fabulous, but that's not what made the culture what it was. I think it was about the people. It was about the relationships that I was able to build in a very short amount of time. And just the fact that I wanted to go to work every day because I really liked the people that I was working with. Right? And that's when I realized I fit well with this culture. I like working with people who value the work that I do. And I like having a manager who had enough time to interact with me every day to check in on me and care about the work that I did. Right? And then what happened was that I left that job because I knew I was coming back to Thailand. So I left it and I came back here. And all of that went away. All the things about what made work meaningful for me was gone because the traditional work culture is nothing. It's not about relationship building. It's not about feeling respected or valued at work, right? And so I looked at the people around me. I looked at myself, like, why don't we like work as much as we should? This doesn't make any sense, right? And so I took, I guess, the experience that I had, as well as the learnings that I had. That I did with people analytics, and that's kind of how Happily was born. It was born out of the idea that we can use technology to improve how we behave in the workplace, to make ourselves happier and to make other people around us happier as well, right? And so yeah, that's how we started, and that's where we are today. That Happily isn't just a measurement tool, but it's a behavioral change tool, and I think that a big push that if workplaces need to make in order to make their workplaces better is not just to measure things more often, is to actually change the behavior of people. Can you make leaders lean on core values more? Can you make managers more proactive in leading their teams? Can you make employees have better soft skills like empathy and self-awareness so that they communicate with each other better? All these things are related to behavior. And so if we can impact these things that are often seen as very like non-tangible, we can actually make a very big difference. And I think that's what we've been able to prove with our work at Happily, is that we're creating measurable improvements by tackling these problems.
Oh, I see. Like when you have this brilliant idea, how do you bring it to reality? Like, did you find teams or did you come up with plans or?
Yeah, I mean, baby steps, right? It's a great question. As many of your questions are. Yeah, it starts with a team first, and I was lucky to be able to work with people that I've been working with on previous startups, so I know them well. I know what they're capable of. I think we have a very good relationship. So, and that's very important. Very early on, like the core team that you build has to be really strong because things are going to change all the time. Your product is going to change, your idea is going to change. You're going to take a lot of feedback from other people. If you don't have a good relationship and you don't have this respect for one another, it can be really hard to communicate change, right? And so, yeah, I think the first step was about identifying that team, and I had that team very early on, right? We started off with a very small group, mostly just engineers, and then, a very few business-oriented people. And yeah, we spent a lot of time building this first product. I think that's one of the most monumental steps for any startup is to build your first minimum viable product, right? Your MVP. The first product that a customer will get to experience. Because that's going to be the largest amount of learning that you get is when you take that idea that you have that's now a product or a service and getting somebody else to use it. So I think that was that was really the main focus point, right? We're not where we are today. Like Happily did not exist in the fully formed version that it is today. It was very bare minimal, but it was to the core that our first product has to prove that this idea works. And if we're able to get people to share feedback, have conversations, and check in, and understand people's sentiment better, and provide these insights to managers, that relationship can get better over time. That was the fundamental thing that we're trying to test. And so we built a product that can test that. And that was, and that worked. We found that people were using this. They were using it because it was fun and it was enjoyable to use, but also because they were forming better relationships with people. And that's what they kept wanting to do, right? And then I guess the next part of building an MVP and proving that you have a business is, will somebody pay for it? It's one thing to build a product, get people to use it, but it's another thing to get people to use it and say, hey, will you pay for this? Because if at MIT, right, it's always said that it's not innovation until you can commercialize it. If you can't commercialize it, if you can't make money out of it, it's just an invention. An invention just by itself. It's cool. It could be very deep tech, but it's not a business, right? And so I think that's the other component of the MVP that is also very important. When you get your product out there, does it create enough value for your customer that you could charge for it? And that's the best feedback and most honest feedback that you can get. It's easy for someone to say, yeah, your product is great, I love it, keep going. But if they're not going to put the money, where their mouth is, that's the best feedback that you have, that your product isn't good enough yet. All the encouragement is BS. The sharpest learning you have is that, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this. I'm going to buy this product. That's the best feedback you're going to get through this. It's like, yeah, I'm creating enough value that somebody is going to take a part of their budget and spend it on that. And that was the enlightening moment for us, right? Like getting your first customer is an overwhelmingly good feeling. It's like, I'm onto something. Because when you get your first customer, you can get your next 10, you can get your next 100. It's just a matter of finding them. Yeah. But so getting your first customer, first 10 customers are going to be, are always the biggest milestone in terms of like building up your startup and business.
So do you consider like communication skill to be useful in like business? Because as you said before, like you need to convince or talk to customers, right?
I think it's the number one skill, period. Like I don't know if there's a more important skill than communication. I think that if you work in a role where you don't have to interact with anybody else, then communication isn't very important. That you don't have to communicate anything. You're creating value by yourself. But I think that we're out of the industrial revolution. We don't work in like a lot of us don't work in an assembly line anymore. And so that kind of input output doesn't really apply. In today's world, it's all about teamwork. It's all about sharing ideas. It's all about, leadership is about communication. Management is about communication, right? Solving a problem is about communication. Marketing is about communication. How do you communicate value to your customers? Sales is that as well. So I think it's very hard to find a role or it's very hard to find something that you do where communication isn't the core. But yeah, I do think that, of course, I still stand by the fact that it's the most important skill that you will have. But I also stand by the fact that I think it's one of the most undervalued and trained skills as well. I see a lot of people go into the workplace and not have these communication skills in place. And that becomes a very big barrier for their success, right? I do hope that there is more effort put in here. And actually part of what Happily does is we help improve these communication skills on a day-to-day level between employees and their managers and between employees and their peers as well. And we find that it has a very outsized impact in their relationship building abilities.
So next, what's your opinion on work-life balance concept? Do you think it's good or
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are two major schools of thought here, right? There's a school of thought that says work-life balance is where you have to make sure that work doesn't get in the way of life, right? And so, what people who advocate for work-life balance is they're advocating for the fact that, hey, you shouldn't work shouldn't stop you from doing the things you want to do. You should commit yourself to work for a certain amount of time in your life, but you have to make room for other parts of your life as well. And I definitely see the validity in that. I think there's another school of thought where work-life balance is not balance is the wrong word. You should find a way to assimilate work and life together where so that you don't really feel that you're working. And I think that maybe I'm a subscriber to that school of thought more because work is my life. Like, and I don't mind it. And maybe it's because of the role models that I had, and my parents were like that, my grandparents were like that. But the truth is that I really do enjoy my work. So that the fact that the moments where I'm like, when I'm forced not to work, when I want to work, that's annoying for me. Like, I want to work. Why are you letting me? Right? So I think that there are two different schools of thought here. It's like, how do you want to approach work-life balance, or how do you want to assimilate work in your life? I think it's a very personal question. I think everybody will have their own answer. I think it's unfair to push this whole like work-life integration to a person who doesn't enjoy their work very much, or who is working so that they could do things in their lives that that they enjoy more. And the truth is that I think that that's very fair. I think it's fair to say most jobs in the world today require the work-life balance approach more. There's a lot of jobs out there in the world today where it's very hard to just force someone to like it. Like, and it's just a fundamental truth, unfortunate truth. I hope the world can change. I hope that all the work that's like undesirable can one day be automated, and we can have AI and robots doing all these things. But for now, we do have jobs that people are doing that aren't good jobs. Like, they're not jobs that people desire to do, but they need to be done. And so in that case, I think work-life balance is the way to go. Hey, don't overwork yourself. Make sure that you are your work isn't getting away in your own personal growth, in your own like well-being. But yeah, I guess I'm lucky that I get to adopt a different approach, and so that's why I definitely see both sides of the Yeah.
Um, how do you think how do you think one can like turn their likes into real actual job work?
So how do you turn the things the things you like the things you're
Yeah,
interested in? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think that if you know what you like and what you're interested in, you already have a very big head start. I know a lot of people. I talk to a lot of people. A lot of people don't know what they like yet. They know what they don't like, but they don't know what they like. And so I mean, I think so. I think that a lot of times it is a self-discovery process, right? I have people that I know who are in their 30s and 40s, and they still don't know what they like, and that's fair. I think that's fine. But if you do know what you like, I think that there is definitely you almost have a responsibility to yourself to find out how you could do the things that you like all the time, right? I know that there's a lot of, and I know it's cliched as well, like, oh, you should always follow your passion, or you should always do what you like. I think that not everybody has the luxury to do so, right? But I think that, so, there's that, but I think there's a lot of people who are scared to approach that too. So I don't think fear should get in the way, right? If you're not doing the things that you like, that you're passionate about, because you're afraid, that should not be the reason, right? I think you should do yourself a favor and confront your fears and learn for yourself whether it's a possibility or not, right? But if you don't have if the things you need to do what you like aren't in place in your life yet, right? If you have to work hard, like, I think everybody goes through that. My first job wasn't something that I enjoyed, but you kind of have to work through that. So I think that I don't think there should be an expectation that you should be able to do what you like from day one. I don't think the world works that way, unfortunately. But I think that you should always be looking at that and having that as one of your goals. that you should, and maybe that's part of my work at Happily too, is that you should want to go to work every day. You should try to find a thing that you're going to do where you enjoy it, you're fulfilled in the purpose and meaning that it brings you. And also, the all part is like you work in a workplace where you like the people that you work with. And I think that when those two things come together, you really end up enjoying your work. Right? And really good work gets produced as well. There are really good outcomes that come out of it. From that.
Next. So, if you could go back in time in your past and then change one thing, what would it be?
Wow. Yeah, this is a tough one. I don't know actually. I guess I live by, I don't really have regrets. I think that I would have, if there was one thing I would do differently, I would have spent more of my time like traveling in my 20s. I think I overworked myself because I enjoyed my work so much, but then I also then didn't see enough of the world. I think that the more that I saw the world, the better I was at being empathetic, the better I was at understanding the opportunities out there. So I think it's one of those things that if you really have this, if you really want to be open-minded, you have to go outside your comfort zone, and you have to travel outside and venture outside, the world that you know in order to really open your mind. I think that open-mindedness is not just, of course, a lot of it is a mindset, but a lot of it is that you have to take yourself outside of what you know in order to have your mind open in that way. And I don't think I did enough of that early enough. So yeah, I think that I would have, if I could do something differently, I would spend more time traveling and seeing the world so that I could have a more complete outlook on people.
Okay. Back to your Happily product. Are you still like improving some part of it?
Every day, our philosophy is continuous improvement, right? There's nothing that we do that's not about making something better. It helps when you have very clear goals. Like our goals for Happily, our mission is clear. We're here to create happy and healthier workplaces. Our workplace is happy and healthy yet, not full, not all of them. And so we have a long way to go, right? So that journey is still there's a lot of runway still for us to travel. But then about our product as well. When we're measuring things all the time, right? We're measuring impact. For example, are we able to improve relationships at work? Yes, we're able to do that. Great. Something else we measure is well-being. Are we able to measure employee well-being? Yeah, we can, and we have been shown to improve employee well-being as well. But we also can show that, depending on stages of time, like a real example is in the past 3 months, there's been a very big decline in well-being across a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And the question is why, right? Is it work-related? Is it not work-related? We want to try to find and learn more. And that's kind of how we could improve our product as well. And through our research and methods, we've found that a big reason why people are not doing well right now in terms of well-being is not related to work stress or anything work-related. It has to do with anxiety. It has to do with them being worried about the situation. And that's very profound. The world is in a very precarious place. People are, there's a lot of things impacting their psyche. And, as an organization, if your goal is to improve your employee well-being, and the problem isn't work-related, what do? Right? And so those are problems that we're thinking about all the time. Are we responsible for solving these problems? I want to think so. I want to believe that, even if it's not work-related, the people that we're working with, we want them to be better. We want them to feel better. How do we make that happen? So because we're measuring these things, and when we build technology, if we're measuring things based on like are people using it, like how many monthly active users do we have, how many weekly active users do we have, and technology tends to be measured that way because like when your business model is based on running ads, like social media, those are the metrics that matter. right? Because the more active users you have, the more ad revenue that you can, that you can capture. But when your technology that you build, your success metrics aren't about that. It's about real outcomes that you want to create. I think that there's always going to be room to improve, right? How can we keep making people happier at work? How can we solve the problem of the day? The workplace has changed a lot in the past 2-3 years, right? Now there's a lot more hybrid work. So now we have a different challenge that we have to contend with. And so I think that, yeah, I mean, to your question, I think what we're doing at Happily is a continuous improvement process. I don't think there'll ever be a day where we're gonna say, yeah, we got to figure it out, we're done. It's just about, what are the key problems that we want to tackle right now, and how can we use, are we in the right position to solve these problems? And those are going to be the ongoing questions that we ask ourselves as we work on Happily.
Other than Happily, do you work on like other companies or ideas?
I used to, and then it's one of those things where you have to do what you preach. Like when I taught entrepreneurship, one of the fundamental things you teach is that entrepreneurship is not a side project. If you want it to work, you have to put 100% into it, right? So you kind of have to. I had to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And so I realized that when I realized that Happily had opportunity to really impact the world and workplaces, I left the other things that I was working on, like I transitioned out of them so that I could fully focus on Happily. And so yeah, it's all consuming. It takes up all my time and more. But I think what I try to do always is to contribute the spare time I have to help others. Like if people want to build a startup, if they want to tackle the world of entrepreneurship, and if I feel like I could help in any way, I definitely would sacrifice my time for that, because I guess I just want to give back. I want them to learn from my mistakes. They're going to be learning from theirs anyway. If they can learn from some of mine as well, all the better.
Do you have like any plan for yourself in the future, like when you're older or something like that?
I don't know. I guess I don't really think out that far ahead in terms of planning. I think that maybe I like to think it's a good thing that I'm so content with the work that I'm doing that I'm not really looking about something else. I'm always just thinking about where else I can go with Happily. Like how far can I take this? How else can I create impact in the medium that I'm building? And so for me, maybe it's a bit short-sighted. I think on the long term, I hope that whatever I build can provide the right impact to the people. Of course, I want to create the most positive impact I can for the people that are closest to me. But I think as a product builder, as an engineer, you're always looking at how well you could scale your solution as well. That, hey, if I could help 100 people, I want to be able to help 1,000. If I could help 1,000, I want to help 1,000,000. And so I hope that if I can build, and my team to build something that people, that really help people, the ability for us to scale is not a problem. And so I think that's my kind of medium-term plan, is that I want to build something that's for the world stage. We build Happily so that it doesn't matter where in the world you are, you can use Happily, you can benefit from it. And I think there's a lot more we want to do with it as well. So I guess my focus right now is very more near term, where I can take Happily and what we can do with in this problem area.
In order to do all these things, do you have like a specific daily routine or schedule?
I wish I did, but I don't. I think it's just a lot of it is obsession. Like you don't ever let go of thinking about it, right? You're thinking about it all the time, and I think that I think that's part of just being always ahead of the game, that you're out thinking everybody else. And it's a curse as well. It's not always a good thing, but it ends up being what you do. So I think that it's not really a routine, but I guess it's something that I experience personally. Is I'm always thinking about the business, about the product, about how to improve. I think that the advice that I have, I guess, or the things that I think has been most impactful for me is around values. Right? If I have values that I live by, that I want the team to live by, things have gone really well when I'm able to uphold those values. For example, the values that happily uphold are courage to fail, integrity, respect, and excellence, right?
Yeah.
And I felt that when I was working and I wasn't able, when I was not consistent with these values, or when there are people around me not consistent with those values, it would be very frustrating. And those were my worst moments, right? Um, but I felt that if I could lean on them and say, hey, all of us need to, those are the four most important values to us. We all need to uphold this. That's when things go well. That's when every time we uphold these values, the team only gets stronger, right? There's understanding, for me as well, work gets better. So I think that I don't have a routine, but I guess I have certain values that I make very clear and I uphold them, and that has made the quality of my life and my work life a lot better.
Um, so happily is about like helping other people or workers feel more happy at their job, right? So what's your opinion on like Thai working class people on how they feel?
Yeah. Uh, I don't know how to answer this question in a way that I want to be very respectful about the culture. I have a lot of respect and admiration for the culture. And I guess I want to speak not just to Thai working culture, but just working culture in general, right? I think that the expectation of the workplace has changed a lot. I think that what I want to encourage people at work to understand is that um, being sorry, I want to try to say something that's not taken the wrong way. Uh, I think that there's a lot for us to learn on both sides of the table when it comes to work. I think that for so long, the employers have had it good, right? Where, through the social revolution, through the industrial revolution, through the information revolution, companies have kind of held the power, and they've kind of forced really bad environments and expectations on employees, and it caused a lot of tension. And I think now that the power dynamic is changing, there is what I would argue an overreaction that's happening. So I would say that there needs to be a more balanced reaction that yes, things need to improve. That employers have to take more responsibility for the health and well-being of their employees. They can't just keep overworking people. But at the same time, from the other point of view, I think there has to be more understanding and empathy as well from the people entering the workforce for what work really is about, right? I mean, to feel entitled that, hey, I'm going to contribute, I'm going to come to work 8 to 5 every day, I'm not going to do anything more than I'm asked, but at the same time, I'm expected to get promoted every year because that's how life works. That's also not a really good expectation to have, because you're just going to set yourself up for being disappointed, right? So I think that there's adjustments that need to be made on both sides, that we should not be overreacting, because when we do, things not, overreactions never cause like healthy outcomes. So I think that's my take on it, is that with the working class, with the workforce coming in, and we can't have unreasonable expectations. We have to have healthy expectations for ourselves and our workplace, and only then can we be happy with what we have. Because if you come into the workplace expecting all these things that really are not reasonable, you'll always be unhappy that you don't have it. And I think that that's where like I have a personal gripe against social media, because I feel social media just fuels that. Like, people see what other people have and want it for themselves, not realizing that what people are sharing isn't really their real selves either. But that it just causes people to have these inflated desires that will never be fulfilled, and that's a recipe for unhappiness. Like, fundamentally, on a philosophical and existential level, unhappiness comes when you are not able to fulfill your own expectations. So I think that that's my opinion, is that we need to do better to create harmony between employees and employers on both sides. We can overreact to what has been happening in order for us to really start to enjoy our work and create better workplaces for everyone.
Um, Do you do you think educational system need to change in order to like prepare students entering adult world?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I think it's always yeah. I mean the short answer is yes. The longer answer is that there are certain skills that I think uh, will become increasingly more valuable. A lot of attention is paid again on hard skills, right? Like, oh, you need these certain hard skills to get this job. And when you look at a job description, it talks a lot about the hard skills that they require of a person. But there are a lot of skills I believe to be more important. I mean, I'll raise one. For example, critical thinking. Right? Critical thinking is an incredibly important skill because it allows you to challenge ideas. It allows you to come up with better ideas, and actually, it's a very big part of the learning process. Right? For example, one facet of critical thinking is understanding cause-effect relationships. Right? What causes what? And if you don't understand cause effect well enough, you can't learn effectively. Because you see something happen, but you don't attribute the right things that cause that result. And so you're learning the wrong thing. So I think there are things, for example, like critical thinking, that if we are able to learn that more effectively in school, in the educational environment that we built, that can be very beneficial for the entering work class. Is that now they know how to learn by themselves, now they know how to approach and solve problems. Whereas maybe I think that our education system on a whole can be less about challenging ideas, like that's usually frowned upon. It's more about how much information can I retain and then spit back out. That's not how workplaces work. That's not how the world. That's not a very valuable skill, to be honest with you, right? And for most of for a lot of different roles that would you take on. So I think that, yeah, I would say that, for example, you brought up communication already, so that definitely is number one. And yeah, number two is around critical thinking. If those two skills are more fundamental part of our learning in the education system, I think that it will help students prepare for the workforce a lot better than maybe they're prepared for today.
I see. So, do you have any tips or advice for young students who are listening to this? And
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of a position I'm in to give advice to students and young teenagers. But I mean, so take it with a grain of salt. But I mean, for me, I feel that there's so much to learn by experimentation, and that that we are kind of programmed to be scared of failure or fear failure a bit too much, right? And yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing to fear failure. I think that it's almost a self-defense mechanism. We want to succeed. We want to approach success in the most certain way possible. But if those things are blocking you from trying the things that you really want to try, if those things are scaring you from doing from doing the things that you're passionate about, I think that's something that you should challenge sooner rather than later. Right? I think we make a lot of excuses and justify ourselves. Oh, I can't do that because of these 5 reasons. And the truth is that you can do it. You just have to find a different way. You can do it. You just have to fail a few times first. I think that's one. I think that following that advice, I think that don't have this expectation on yourself that you're going to succeed every time you try to do something. That really doesn't work. I think that I don't know where we got this idea that successful people are always successful in everything they do. I think a lot of it said about successful people are just people who try a lot harder. They fail a lot more times. I think that we have to start celebrating that a bit more. I think that's starting very young. It's just that if you're going to approach something, don't be discouraged because you failed 5 times or 6 times. It might be the 7th time that you'll succeed. Right? I know that that's my story. I failed at startup so many times before I got it right, and I'm still learning. Right? But yeah, I think I took a long time to really understand that and feel at peace with that. That my measurement of success was somebody else's measurement of success. I look at my friends, I look at the people around me and how they measure their own success, and maybe it's about how much money they earn or what things they had. But in the end of the day, that's a futile competition. That doesn't really matter at the end of the day. That you're really just competing with yourself. And if you can be better the next day than you were the day before, you're on the right track, right? And so that's the advice I have, that, just compete against yourself, not against other people, and don't be scared to do things that because you think you're going to fail. Expect that you're going to fail, and if you have a different outcome, all the better you are for it.
Um, so do you have any like recommended books, films, or any other medias?
Oh boy, I guess it depends what you're interested in. Like, for example, because I have this very deep interest in organizational psychology,
Yeah.
I read a lot of Adam Grant. I think he's a great author who takes, who's also like a modern philosopher in many ways. But yeah, I think that there's an infinite amount of resources out there to learn. I like to learn by doing, so I don't read as much as I should, but I just like to get my hands dirty, right? Like, if I want to build something, I build it. I encourage that. Like, there should never be an obstacle to learning. And with YouTube, with blog posts everywhere, with people creating content, information and education is free. So I guess I'll just encourage that, is that, you spend a bit less time watching TV and Game of Thrones or whatever. Like, don't eliminate it altogether. I think there's enjoyment in that. I think that definitely spare a bit more time in learning things that are productive, that will help you get to where you are. And yeah, that's been that's where I've gotten the largest amount of learning that I have is just by doing it myself. And I think that, I'd encourage that for other people too.
I think I've heard you talk about like measuring success.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you measure your own success?
Yeah. This is another very tough one, but also very simple. Is that today I measure success based on my ability to learn. So if I know more today than I did yesterday, I've had a good day. I've spent my day worthwhile. Even if I'm in a customer meeting and it doesn't go well and I'm not able to close the deal, as long as I have some valuable insight that will help me do it differerly and better next time, I find that was a successful call. So I think that I changed the way I look at success. Right? The old way of looking at success is that you weren't able to close the deal, that you failed that day. For me, it doesn't matter if I close the deal or not. I learned something, and I can apply that learning to something else that'll be more beneficial. So I've had a good day. I've had a successful day. So I think that by changing what success means to you can help you find success a lot more than in a lot more parts of your work than you naturally would. So I think that's a big thing for me. So yeah, learning is a big one, and two is creating impact. Right? Am I creating the impact that I sought out to create? And so by being able to measure that really well, I could see that. I could go every day, and even if I have a week where things don't really go well, I can look back and look at the customers who are using Happily, who are succeeding because of it. And then sometimes I just go and read their feedback, or I just pick up the phone and I talk to that CEO who's using it, and he or she makes my day. She's like, yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. It's helped me a ton this week, and then I could feed off of that. That my success is the fact that I can make somebody else's workplace better. I can make their workday more positive. And so I think that sometimes you have to seek that as well. That it doesn't come to you as freely as you'd like. But yeah, there's success everywhere you look at it. It just depends how you define it. And just make sure that you own those definitions. Don't let other people define it for you. Yeah.
So our last question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you happy in what you're doing right now?
Yes, very, right, and it's a very good last question, because I think that it forces us to understand better what happiness really is, right? To be happy doesn't mean that you're happy every single day. I think that humans are very emotional beings. Like in Happily as well, we measure sentiment, we ask people how they're feeling. A person who is happy every single day we think there's something wrong with us because nobody's happy every single day. That's not possible, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be things in your life, and a lot of people force themselves to be happy. They're like, no, something bad happened. I'm going to be happy though. Because that's resilience, and that's fair. That's fine. But it's recognizing that you don't have to be happy every day. That there's going to be days where you're not going to do well. But I think that if you are well bound, if you have good well-being, and you see the world the right way, you can go from being unhappy to back to being happy very quickly, right?
Yeah.
We see that people who have low well-being, who aren't happy, are the ones who, when they become unhappy, it takes them a very long time to recover. It takes them a lot of effort to recover, and that's not where you want to be. And so that's not, sometimes it doesn't have to only do with you, it has to be with your support network. Are you in the right environment so that when you're unhappy, the next day you could be happy again, right? Can you spring back quickly? And I think that's the true definition of resilience. Do you have the environment around you so that you can be as resilient as you need to be, right? And for me, going back to your question, yes, I say yes because I am in that environment. That if I have days that aren't going well and I'm maybe not that happy that day, I am very confident the next day will be better because I have people that I'm working with that I really like, that I have a support network, from my family to my friends that I can lean on. And what's better than that, right? So I think that's for me. I very easily say that I'm happy because I'm able to move from unhappy to happy very quickly, whenever it happens.
Okay, thank you so much for such an inspiring conversation.
Sure, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to speak to me. I really enjoyed your questions. I think they were very well thought out. I also think that you did a lot of research and homework in order to ask these kind of questions I don't really get very often. So thank you for that. Thank you for going above and beyond to make sure that this is worthwhile, not only for your viewers but for me as well. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you so much for you too. I think our listener will enjoy your conversation so much.
Cool. Thanks, Bryce. Maybe if you don't mind, I'd love to ask you a question as well.
Yeah.
What's your inspiration for success hunters? Like, what got you to do this? What's your inspiration for this?
Yeah, so my goal in doing this is to share the experience I get from talking to successful people and to extract a secret formula like how to become successful,
Mhm.
and also advice for students of my age who are thinking about this area. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I love it. I'm very impressed that you're doing it. And thank you for inviting me on board. I hope I was able to contribute in some way. And if there's anything else I can do, on your journey, let me know. I want to be your friend. I want to be a person that can be a resource for you. So, let me know.
Thank you so much.
Will do. All right, sorry. Thank you so much. Have a good one. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate the time too.
Yeah.
Have
All
a
right.
good
Take
day.
care.
Take care.
Bye.